Level 1. Smurf. It's 9:14 on a Tuesday morning, and you're standing in line at a Chase branch in Phoenix, Arizona. You're wearing khakis and a polo shirt. You have a gym bag over your shoulder. Inside the bag is $43,000 in cash, bundled in rubber bands, stuffed inside a Nike shoebox. You don't look nervous. You've been told not to look nervous. You've been told that looking nervous is the only thing that will actually get you caught. You step up to the teller window. You slide $9,800 across the counter in a plain envelope, and you say you want to deposit it into a savings account. The teller doesn't look up. She counts it, types something, hands you a receipt. You say thank you. You leave. You do this 4 more times today. Different banks, different branches, different names on different accounts that don't belong to you. By the end of the afternoon, you've moved just under $50,000 through the system, and every single transaction came in under $10,000, which is the federal threshold that triggers a currency transaction report. You are doing what the people who trained you called structuring. Law enforcement calls it smurfing. You call it Tuesday. You've been doing this for 6 weeks. You get $500 cash per run, handed to you in a parking lot the night before. You have no idea whose money this is. You have no idea where it came from. You've been told not to ask. The man who recruited you, a guy you knew from the neighborhood named Hector, told you it was easy money and that you'd never touch anything dangerous. He was right about both things, technically. But what he didn't tell you is that if you ever stop showing up, or if one of those accounts gets flagged, you become the problem that needs to be cleaned up. And the people who clean up problems don't use accountants. By the end of the month, you've moved close to $600,000 through 17 different bank accounts. You've started to notice patterns in the system. You've started to notice which tellers ask questions and which ones don't. You've started to think that maybe you're good at this. One evening, Hector picks you up, and instead of handing you tomorrow's cash in a parking lot, he takes you to a house. Inside the house, there's a man at a kitchen table with a laptop and 2 cell phones. He looks at you for about 30 seconds without speaking. Then, he says you're moving up. Level 2. Cell coordinator. The house is in a quiet suburb outside of Dallas. 3 bedrooms, 2-car garage, a Ring doorbell camera on the front porch that the neighbors probably think is for home security. It isn't. You are now running a cell of 12 Smurfs across the Dallas-Fort Worth metro. You don't go to the banks anymore. Other people go to the banks. Your job is to manage the people, manage the routes, manage the schedules, and make sure that at no point does any single person move too much, too fast, in too few locations. You work off a burner phone that gets replaced every 10 days. You track deposits on a spreadsheet that exists on an encrypted drive that you have been told to destroy if anyone knocks on the door with a badge. The money you're coordinating now runs between $800,000 and $1.2 million per week. It arrives in duffel bags, in shoe boxes, in vacuum-sealed bricks wrapped in plastic, dropped at 3 different stash houses across the metro. You count it, you log it, you distribute it across your 12 people in amounts that keep every transaction clean and invisible. One morning, one of your Smurfs calls you in a panic. A teller at a Wells Fargo in Plano flagged her transaction and asked her to wait while she called a manager. Your Smurf walked out of the bank and left the $9,600 sitting on the counter. You tell her to go home, change clothes, don't go back to that branch, don't contact anyone else in the network. You hang up, and then you sit very still for about 4 minutes, thinking. The money is gone, but the account wasn't in her real name. The bank has her face on camera, though. And if they pull that camera footage and run it against anything, you have a problem. You call up the chain, not to Hector. Hector is below you now. You call a number stored in your phone under a contact named roofing. You explain the situation in the way you've been trained to explain it. Short sentences, no names, no amounts, nothing that means anything to anyone who might be listening. The voice on the other end tells you to shut down that sector of the network for 2 weeks and rotate your Smurfs to new accounts in new cities. You lose 4 people who decide the heat isn't worth it. You rebuild in 11 days instead of 14 because falling behind on volume is worse than the risk. The cartel doesn't care about your problems. It cares about its money. You start to understand during those 11 days what the job actually is. It isn't about moving cash. Cash is easy. The job is about maintaining the illusion that the cash doesn't exist, and that illusion requires constant maintenance, constant discipline, and the complete willingness to sacrifice anyone at any level who threatens it. You are not exempt from that rule. Nobody is. Level 3, Placement Architect. You fly business class to Miami now. Not every week, that would be noticeable. But enough that the flight attendants on the Dallas-Miami route sometimes remember your face. You've been told to rotate airlines. You rotate airlines. Your operation has expanded. You're no longer just managing Smurfs. You're now overseeing the placement layer of a much larger network, the point at which raw drug cash first touches the legitimate financial system. You have 11 cash-intensive businesses in your portfolio: 3 car washes, 2 restaurants, a parking structure, a check-cashing storefront, 2 nightclubs, and a pair of laundromats. On paper, every one of them is profitable. On paper, they have customers and payroll and quarterly tax filings. Some of them even have actual customers. The trick is that their actual revenue is supplemented every week by cartel cash that flows through their registers and gets reported to the IRS as legitimate income. The businesses pay taxes on that income. Dirty money becomes taxable business revenue. That revenue becomes clean. You know the numbers on every location. You know how much a car wash in a working-class neighborhood can realistically move per month without raising eyebrows. And you know exactly how much over that number you can push before the IRS starts asking questions. The margin is your job. Push too hard and you attract auditors. Push too soft and you're leaving millions sitting in stash houses getting eaten by rats or getting stolen by whoever's guarding it. In March, one of the nightclub managers skims $30,000 off the top of a deposit. You find out within 48 hours because the numbers don't match, and you know these numbers the way a surgeon knows anatomy. You report it up. You are never told what happens to the manager. You don't ask. 2 weeks later, there's a new manager. You recalibrate that location's reporting and move on. What keeps you awake at night isn't the police. At this level, you are so far removed from any physical drug transaction that federal agents would have to build a years-long financial case just to connect you to anything. What keeps you awake is the possibility of a mistake in the numbers, because the people above you, the people you have never met in person, only ever communicated with through layers of cutouts and encrypted messages, they are not interested in explanations. If the money that should exist doesn't exist, the assumption is not incompetence. The assumption is theft. And theft, at this level, has exactly one consequence. Level 4, Layering Specialist. There is a shell company registered in Delaware called Sunridge Capital Holdings, LLC. It has no employees, no office, and no product. It exists only on paper, and on paper, it is a legitimate investment vehicle that recently acquired a minority stake in a real estate development project in Guadalajara. That acquisition was funded by a wire transfer from a holding company in the Cayman Islands, which received its capital from a trading account in Panama, which was funded by an import-export business in Miami that received a large payment for agricultural machinery that was never built and never shipped. You built that chain. Every company in it, every bank account, every wire transfer, every fake invoice. This is called layering. The second stage of money laundering, where the money moves so many times through so many jurisdictions that the thread connecting it to a drug sale in Phoenix becomes mathematically impossible to follow. You are now operating at a level where the cash itself is almost irrelevant. You deal in wire transfers, in letters of credit, in trade documents, in corporate registrations across 7 countries. You have a legitimate MBA from the University of Texas. Your LinkedIn profile says you're a financial consultant. You have clients who don't know your other clients exist. The money you move in a single month exceeds what most people will earn in their lifetimes. Your cut is a percentage, a small percentage, but a small percentage of a very large number is still a very large number. You have a condo in Brickell, a car that costs more than most houses, and a tailor in Miami who doesn't ask where the cash comes from. You have built a life that looks, from every angle, like the product of ambition and intelligence, but the structure you've built has a fragility that you think about constantly. Every layer of separation between you and the cartel is also a layer between you and any leverage you might have. You know things. You know the structure of several laundering networks. You know account numbers and company names and the real identities behind several nominee directors. That knowledge protects you, because you becoming a liability is more costly than keeping you comfortable. But it also makes you dangerous to the people above you, and people who are dangerous to cartels have a limited shelf life. One afternoon, you receive an encrypted message from a contact you've worked with for 3 years. The message is 2 words: they know. You don't know if they means the DEA, the IRS, FinCEN, or the people inside your own organization who have decided you've gotten too expensive to maintain. You sit at your desk in your Brickell condo, the bay spread out through the floor-to-ceiling windows below you, and for the first time in years, you feel the exact same thing. You felt standing in that Chase branch in Phoenix with $9,800 in an envelope and $43,000 more in a shoebox. You feel like someone is watching you, and there is absolutely nothing you can do about it. Level 5. The integration. 6 months earlier, before the message, before everything unraveled, you had reached the final stage. Integration, the point where laundered money stops being money at all and becomes assets. Real estate in Miami, Austin, and Mexico City, a hospitality group with 4 boutique hotels, an equity stake in a legitimate fintech startup that processes payments for small businesses across Latin America. You owned things, not through shell companies anymore, through holding structures sophisticated enough that forensic accountants working a federal case would need 18 months just to understand the architecture, let alone dismantle it. You were no longer laundering money. You were managing a portfolio. The cartel's money had become so integrated into legitimate commerce that separating it would require destroying a dozen real businesses with real employees, real vendors, real tax records. That's what integration means. You make the dirty money so thoroughly part of the real economy that cleaning it up costs more than leaving it alone. And for a brief period, maybe 8 months, that felt like safety. It felt like you had built something that couldn't be touched. The money was clean. The businesses were real. The paper trail, if anyone ever followed it, would terminate in a Delaware LLC that pointed to a Cayman holding company that pointed to a Panamanian trading account that had been dissolved 2 years ago. What you didn't account for was someone you trusted. A deputy inside one of the cartel's financial cells, someone 2 levels below you, got arrested on an unrelated charge in Laredo. He had been holding a modified phone. On that phone was a partial ledger. The ledger didn't have your name on it. It had a designation, a string of numbers you recognized immediately when the DEA agent slid a photograph across an interrogation table 18 months later and asked if you'd ever seen it before. You said no. She didn't believe you. She had already spent 14 months building the chain that connected that designation to Sunridge Capital Holdings, LLC, to the Miami import-export business, to the agricultural machinery invoices, to the cash-intensive businesses in Dallas, to the Smurfs in Phoenix. They had all of it. Not because you made a mistake in the numbers. The numbers were perfect. They had it because the person you never met, the person at the bottom of the chain, the Smurf in the polo shirt who walked away from a Wells Fargo in Plano, leaving $9,600 on a counter. She talked. The cycle continues. You never touched a gun. You never touched a kilo. You sat in glass offices and wore tailored suits and moved money through systems so clean and so sophisticated that the people above you called you indispensable. You built something that worked perfectly right up until it didn't. The sentence is 22 years. The assets are seized. The businesses are liquidated. The fintech startup survives under new management. It was legitimate enough that it didn't need you. The Brickell condo is sold at auction. The tailor in Miami finds new clients. Hector is still out there, standing in parking lots, handing cash to new people in polo shirts, telling them it's easy money and they'll never touch anything dangerous. He's right about both things technically.